Turn first with me to Psalm 13 tonight. Psalm 13. The book of Psalms, as you know, is the oldest hymnal known to man. It's a hymnal, and it contains some of the most moving and some of the most meaningful expressions of the human heart. David wrote Psalms when he was discouraged. And we know that people become discouraged. The trials that we go through, the deserts of life that we go through, the uncertainty, the failed relationships, failed marriages, in a lot of cases, lingering health issues can be very devastating. The things that we go through, bringing discouragement. Sometimes this discouragement can move on to what we would call despondency. Despondency. True story of a pastor who received a phone call one evening and went to a dirty garage apartment. He was met at the door with a man who had a shotgun in his hand. And they sat down at a tiny table for several hours, talking. And this man poured out his heart to this pastor. He had just been released from a hospital where he was recovering from some surgery. He was alone. He had no family. His marriage had failed. Very intense struggles that this man went through. This pastor said, I noticed that in the house, in this tiny garage apartment, that the walls were full of pictures. Photos of this man's boy, photos of himself, photos of everything from Little League right up through high school. All the failures that this man had gone through, all the discouragement that he had encountered, was very difficult on this man. This pastor sat there, talked to him, and prayed with him. Left that evening, not knowing what would happen, only to hear within a week that this man had taken his life. To him, life was no longer worth the fight, if you will. Discouragement, despondency, depression. In Psalm 13, David writes, How long wilt thou forget me, O Lord, forever? How long wilt thou hide thy face from me? David's down. He feels forgotten. Experienced many, many dark days. Had slain Goliath. Was hailed a hero, only to arouse the jealousy of Saul, who hated David's popularity. And Saul sought to kill David, as you know. David's going through a very difficult time, haunted by this madman by the name of Saul. He writes, "How long wilt thou forget me, O Lord, forever? How long wilt thou hide thy face from me?" Despondency, discouragement had set in. David had been running for his life. The anointed king-elect is running for his life. Despondent, wondering if the chase would ever end. And he writes, how long? How long? How long? Look at verse 2. How long? How long? Even back in the 6th Psalm, my soul was also sore vexed, but thou, O Lord, how long? How long? David felt like he'd been abandoned. He'd been forgotten. God has forgotten me forever. Will thou forget me forever, God? All of this is a result of these trials in the desert of life that David had gone through that had continued for a long period of time. And there wasn't much relief. And so he became emotionally crushed beneath all of the load of this desert experience, to the point he questions if God had abandoned him. How long will thou hide thy face from me, God? He has feelings of abandonment. God doesn't care about me. Maybe God has simply lost interest in me. Look at verse 2. How long shall I take counsel in my soul? He's trying to work things out for himself. How long shall I take counsel? The Hebrew term that's translated take counsel means to plan. David has now begun to develop on his own a plan out. He plans a way out, if you will, to adjust all these matters himself. David is a lot like a lot of people. They tend to try to work things out themselves. And they may say to themselves, well, after all, God gave me a mind and he expects me to use it. God helps those who help themselves. How many times have you ever heard that? Find it in the Bible. You can't, because it ain't in there. But people say it all the time. God helps those who help themselves. No, it's not in the Bible. Listen to a few Proverbs. Commit your works to the Lord, and your plans will be established. 16:3. When a man's ways are pleasing to the Lord, he makes even his enemies be at peace with him. 16:7. 16:33. The lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. How about Proverbs 3? Trust in the Lord with all thine own heart. Lean not on your own understanding, and always acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. He will make your paths straight. You try to work things out yourself, you get into the situation that David's in. How long shall I take counsel, my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? How long shall mine enemy be exalted over me? Having sorrow in my heart all the day, David says. All the day. Worry becomes a companion of David. Frustration, stress, strain. Those are constant companions of David. So many times we fail to leave our burdens with him, and we try to work things out. David got to the point, I resent this trial. I resent this trial. If you are one who likes to underline your Bibles, look at those first two verses and just underline how long. How long? How long? How long? 4 times in those 2 very short verses. So this test that David's going through, this desert that he's going through, must be something that has lasted a while. How much longer? How long? And then in verse 3 he prays, "Consider and hear me, O Lord my God, lighten my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death." Lighten my eyes. Enlighten my eyes, Lord, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest mine enemy say, I have prevailed against him, and those that trouble me rejoice when I am moved. You read the first 2 verses and you look at verse 3, and you see a difference in the tone, don't you? Something happened between verse 2 and verse 3. Maybe David had written the first 2 verses and he sits back and he takes a good look at what he'd just written. And what he was seeing there was self-pity. Self-pity. Maybe it just alarmed him at the unbelief that he was beginning to see. His despondency is beginning to lift. He is on his knees. By the way, it is on your knees that is a place of victory. Instead of viewing the Lord as being removed and unconcerned, he requests that he consider and answer him. O Lord, my God. O Lord, my God. His outlook has changed. He now asks the Lord to enlighten his eyes. The word that's translated enlighten in verse 3 literally means to cause to shine. To cause to shine. This is an identical term that's used in a benediction that you are very, very familiar with. If you turn to Numbers 6. Look down at verse 24. The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace. And give you peace. David's countenance had lost its shine, so to speak. He longed for the time that God's brightness would reflect itself again in his eyes. But now, instead of worrying about his enemy, in verse 2, look what he does in verse 4. He releases that enemy to the Lord and lets him take care of it. Lest mine enemies say, I have prevailed against him, and those that trouble me rejoice when I am moved. I'm moved. And then in verse 5, one of those little transitions there that we just take and just read, but. You see now, when you read, now this but is a transition here. You're going to see a transition from fear to faith. There's going to be a transition from questioning to claiming God's promise. But I have trusted in thy mercy. My heart shall rejoice in thy salvation. I will sing unto the Lord because he hath dealt bountifully with me. But usually introduces some type of a contrast to you, the reader. And what he's saying there, in contrast to all these earlier fears and all these earlier complaints, my dull eyes, my pride, my proud heart, I have trusted. My heart shall rejoice. I will sing. I will sing. His circumstances hadn't changed. Saul still was hunting him. The wilderness was there. The barren slopes of Judea were still barren. He's in the wilderness. He's in a desert. His hunger is still a reality. In other words, nothing surrounding him, nothing in his circumstances had changed. But David changed. See, David did a 180. God dealt bountifully with me. I will sing unto the Lord because he hath dealt bountifully with me. We go through trials, we go through deserts. We just experienced going through a series of studies talking about the deserts of life. I've talked about many of them on Sunday morning. And yes, there are times when discouragement sets in. There are times when despondency sets in. There are times when downright depression sets in. Turn with me to Psalm 119. Oh, by the way, Christy, I just now looked at my phone for the time and I saw your text. Okay, I just now saw it. Sorry, 7 o'clock. Okay, okay. I'm sorry. I just now saw it. In Psalm 119, look at verse 71. It is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes. The law of thy mouth is better unto me than thousands of gold and silver. Thy hands have made me and fashioned me. Give me understanding that I may learn thy commandments. They that fear thee will be glad when they see me, because I have hoped in thy word. I know, O Lord, that thy judgments are right, and thou in faithfulness hast afflicted me. David, in essence, is saying trials are good for us. They're good for us. We must go through deserts. And that's the thing, we need to understand that when you become a child of God, it doesn't mean everything is good. Everything's going to be rosy. It's not going to happen. We will go through difficulties. We will go through trials. We will go through struggles. We'll go through times of discouragement. There are going to be times when you'll feel downright despondent. There will be times when you feel depressed. But you need to remember that God is for you, and he is in control, and he has you in his mind. The Apostle Paul realized that. Look at 2 Corinthians. Again, a very familiar passage. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. And what Paul realized about his thorn in the flesh. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, down at verse 9. He said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then am I strong. When I am weak, then I am strong. Let's read another psalm. I'm not going to take time to really say anything about it, but look at Psalm 5. Psalm 5, I think it is. Give ear to my words, O Lord. Consider my meditation. Hearken unto the voice of my cry, my God and my God, my King and my God, for unto thee I will pray. My voice shalt thou hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning will I direct my prayer unto thee, and I will look up. For thou art not a God that hath pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell with thee. The foolish shall not stand in thy sight. Thou hatest all workers of iniquity. Thou shalt destroy them that speak leasing. The Lord will abhor the bloody and deceitful man. But as for me, I will come into thy house in the multitude of thy mercy, and in thy fear will I worship toward thy holy temple. Lead me, O Lord, in thy righteousness because of mine enemies. Make thy way straight before my face, for there is no faithfulness in their mouth. Their inward part is very wickedness. Their throat is an open sepulchre. They flatter with their tongue. Destroy thou them, O God. Let them fall by their own counsels. Cast them out in the multitude of their transgressions, for they have rebelled against thee. But let all those that put their trust in thee rejoice. Let them ever shout for joy, because thou hast defended them. Let them also that love thy name be joyful in thee. For thou, Lord, wilt bless the righteous. With favor wilt thou compass him as with a shield. You know when David wrote that? Again, when he was going through a very difficult time of discouragement. Very discouraged over everything that was taking place. And I will stop with this one. Go all the way to Psalm 142. Psalm 142. If you look at the superscription above that, we know it's a masculine. In other words, it's an instructive psalm. It's meant to give an insight and instruction. It's a psalm of David. But look what else it says. It's a prayer when he was in a cave. When he was in a cave. It's a psalm when depression had set in. Depression. Again, running from Saul, running from this madman. He's in distress. and he prays. It's a prayer when he was in a cave. I think it was Charles Spurgeon who said, caves make good closets for prayer. Caves make good closets for prayer. This psalm is actually a prayer. I don't think we are to analyze the prayer that much, but we are to let it bring insight and encouragement. It's a good one to consider when you are going through depression. When things are just like you're in the pits, so to speak. I cried unto the Lord with my voice. I shrieked. Cried means I shrieked. I shriek. That's what it literally means in the Hebrew. I shrieked. With my voice unto the Lord did I make supplication. He's in deep despair and he's shrieking. I poured out my complaint before him. I showed before him my trouble. That word trouble means to bound up, tied tightly, restricted, cramped. In other words, David is in a tight fix, if you will. A tight fix. I declare my trouble. In other words, there's nothing hidden. I'm declaring to you my trouble. I showed before him my trouble. I declared my trouble. He's in a tight fix. He's hurting. He's depressed. He shrieks. Look at verse 3. When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then thou knewest my path. In the way wherein I walked have they privily laid a snare for me. Verse 4. I looked on my right hand and beheld, but there was no man that would know me. Refuge failed me. No man cared for my soul. He looked to his right. He invited the Lord to look to his right. There's a reason for that. Because to a person's right is a place for the protector. That is where a protector or a defender would stand. But there was nobody there. So he felt alone. He could not escape. He felt like there was no one who cared for his soul. No one. He is very, very depressed. Very depressed. I looked on my right hand, beheld, there was no man that would know me. Refuge failed me. No man cared for my soul. I cried unto thee, O Lord. I said, thou art my refuge and my portion in the land of the living. Attend unto my cry, for I am brought very low. Deliver me from my persecutors, for they are stronger than I. Bring my soul out of prison, that I may praise thy name. The righteous shall compass me about, for thou shalt deal there it is again. Thou shalt deal bountifully with me. So if you're depressed, if you're in a cave of depression, despondency, discouragement, we just need to do as David did. We need to look up. And we need to cry out. We need to cry out. Hold nothing back, because you can be certain that he is able to handle whatever you take to him. Rely upon him. So in the deserts of life, when discouragement, despondency, depression set in, cry out and look up. All right, that's all I got.